Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the CDL podcast, the pre-Minnesota show. This one is going to be all about the predictions and a little bit of news throughout the CDL this week. And then we're going to get into predictions a little bit later. There isn't a ton of roster news, so there won't be a lot of that, but we'll still touch on at least one of the rumors I have heard. But first, before we get into any of that, I wanted to thank you guys all for the support. Obviously, I talked about in the last podcast, the support on the video before that was absolutely insane. And even though the support didn't do as well as the video before on this last one, but it still did extremely well. Just keeps going up and up so far for the uploads. And I think we're going to keep trending upwards, it looks like. So I hope that keeps continuing. We brought in some new subscribers in that last video. We had some good likes. We had some comments. A couple constructive things over the last few videos. I'd really love to hear your guys' opinions in the comments and have a conversation, or if you have some hot takes. I like to give some hot takes a lot of times in my post shows. So if you guys had some hot takes that maybe differ from mine or agree with mine, I'd love to hear your comments and your thoughts on the league, and maybe we can get into a discussion about some of your thoughts. If you agree, you disagree, I'd love to just have a friendly discussion about the CDL and some of your thoughts, because obviously doing this podcast, that's something I love to do. So yeah, we're going to do predictions in this one, a little bit of roster news, a little bit of league news, because like I said, there's not a ton of roster news. But yeah, thank you guys for the support on the last video. It really meant a lot to me. Yeah, if you guys keep supporting, that would even mean more to me. The first news around the league today, as we get into the news here, is the big GA. I'm sure you've all heard about it if you follow the CDL at all or follow any of the pros on Twitter. They've been kind of getting in constant arguments. It's been a big topic. There's a lot of people that agree with what they want to do, a lot of people that disagree. They disagree for different reasons. They agree for different reasons. It's kind of just a huge mess. But if you don't know what GAs are, they're gentlemen's agreements. They've been in Call of Duty for as long as I can remember. They've been in for a very long time. And basically what they do, for those of you that don't know, is let's say there's like an overpowered gun or attachment or something like that. Something in the game that's like really broken in a way, or like a kill streak or something. They'll take it, and the pros will, it's not technically banned by the league. Like if they wanted to, the pros could put it on and use it, and there would be no technical punishment from the league. They might be blacklisted from scrims, or the players might hate them, but there'd be no technical punishment for the league. But these broken things the players take, and they make a gentleman's agreement, kind of like a little contract in a way, and they agree not to use it. So like, I would go back into the past, but I want to keep it as current as possible, because I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast and you're watching Modern Warfare, odds are you probably watched the Black Ops 4 season, keeping it pretty recent. I can't remember specifically a ton of things that were GA'd in Black Ops 4, because not a ton of movement. Like sometimes it's, like they'll GA snaking, like that's a movement mechanic, but I don't really think any movement mechanics were really GA'd in Black Ops 4. But one I clearly remember was when those streaks were in the game, like the drone squad. I can't remember what it was. I can't remember if it was called attack helicopter in that game, but whatever the attack helicopter type of thing was in that game, that was GA'd in the drone squad, because those were AI controlled score streaks. So like they made the argument like, well, once the drone squad got buffed, like if you got a drone squad, obviously it takes skill to get the drone squad, but if somebody was just like kind of like just only playing for kills and score and was able to just like run around the map and get that drone squad, their team could be losing by 100 points in hardpoint, but once that thing is on the map, it goes absolutely crazy, and it's not really competitive, because it's a score streak flying around the map and just shooting everyone, and like it clearly doesn't like showcase your skill, I guess, as a team, I'm trying to say. So that was GA'd. So things like that, things that aren't really competitive that the pros see, or something that might be overpowered. So like if there's a super overpowered gun, like the MSBS, I remember in Ghost, it was like a burst fire weapon that was absolutely broken. I think that was GA'd right away, because it could like kill you in 1 or 2 bullets sometimes. So things like that, if it's really broken and it's not banned in the rule set, the pros will like get together and say, okay, this is super broken, or like snaking. It's not like, it's in the game technically, but like it's kind of a BS way to play, like not really legit. So they'll like say you can't snake. So this is what the pros, I think there are some other things in it, but like the 3 main things that pros wanted GA is the auto tack sprint mechanic, the Merc foregrip, and snaking. So my thoughts on GAs are kind of mixed. I kind of flip-flop on what I think is like, I don't have a super strong opinion on them, but to me, this is one thing I am strong of. I'm of the opinion that I wish they weren't a thing, Not because I don't want the pros to make the game more competitive, but because I don't think the pros should have to do it. I was listening to the Hard Points podcast earlier this week, and I completely agree with them. The pros shouldn't have to worry about GAing. The game itself should ban things that are overpowered or broken or like don't work very well in the competitive setting, or they should just make the game more competitive. I know there's a huge pubs fan base. It's bigger than the competitive base, but if you're making a franchise league for this much money, you're clearly investing in it as a company. You should have some like guidelines in it and try to keep it the most competitive and the best product possible, not just throwing out random stuff. So GAs, I mean, I feel like the players shouldn't have to worry about that on top of whatever else they're worrying about with their team dynamics and team scrims and everything like that in the roster. But unfortunately, even though we have a franchise league, they still have to worry about it. Sometimes I think GAs can get out of hand. I think they can make the game boring to watch. I believe there's a GA in World War II that kind of made things a little more boring. Maybe when the FG got GA'd. I don't know. It's just sometimes pros can get a little carried away and like, wow, I'm not good with this, so I want to ban it. Like, I mean, just because you're not good with something, kind of like the Rampart last year. That meta was kind of broken. Then it got GA'd and LG didn't really agree to it. Like, the Rampart was like pretty darn good, but I don't think it was like broken, and teams are just like, it doesn't fit the meta we're used to, so let's get rid of it. Like, I don't really like when teams do that. But I think for the truly broken things, it's worth it. So, I mean, like, the pros shouldn't have to GA snaking. Snaking just shouldn't be in the game. But, you know, the way Call of Duty is in the fast move mechanic, like Merc talked about, it's kind of inevitable that it's going to be in the game as long as we want COD to keep moving fast and not clunky. But I agree, the pros should GA snaking. It's something that it technically is in the game. I don't really think it's intended to be, but it's in the game. It's like where you lay down, and then since you can stand up so fast from like behind like some kind of like block or something, like a head glitch or something, if you lay down and then stand up really fast, you can technically like see a player before they can see you for a split second, so you can get shots off quicker. And as long as you have a good shot, you're pretty much guaranteed to get that kill. So yeah, I don't think that you should just be able to like spam snaking, but like if somebody kind of accidentally like lays down to get to cover, reloads, and then like shoots you or something, then I mean, it could technically be seen as a snake, but if they're not constantly doing it on purpose, then like, whatever. But yes, I agree that in the GA, you shouldn't be able to purposely just continue snaking because it kind of ruins the competitive integrity. Then to the Merc foregrip, I mean, once again, I kind of see why they want it GA'd. You shouldn't be able to hip fire somebody from across the map and just not miss a bullet. Obviously, that should go without saying. That's not competitive at all. And honestly, I wouldn't even like, if I wasn't a competitive fan at all, I wouldn't want this in pubs either. You know how frustrating it is to like a guy sees you across the map and doesn't even aim in his sight and he almost like doesn't even miss a bullet. Like, come on, that shouldn't even be in pubs. That's so broken, so overpowered. So I can see why they want this out. But once again, I can get on board with taking the Merc foregrip out. Yeah, that's whatever. I can get on board with that. That can be in the GA, sure. But they shouldn't have to worry about that. That should just be like an attachment. Even if you want to keep it in pubs, whatever, for the casual fan, that should be an attachment that's banned in competitive. A cross map hipfire grip, no thanks. Then the last thing in that GA is the auto tack sprint. I'm really mixed on this because I heard, I think, Nameless talking about this. It's kind of like when Scuff controllers came around, people were like, oh, that's cheating, but now everybody uses, I mean, whatever, if it's a Battle Beaver or a Scuff or an Xbox Elite controller, whatever you're using with like paddles or extra buttons on the back, like technically it's not what a standard controller is, but everybody's using them, and like I think it does make the level of gameplay higher, where people are like able to drop shot or jump shot or just move better with like having those extra buttons on the back of their controller. I have an Elite controller for the Xbox, and I really think not only does it improve how I play at Call of Duty, but I actually just think it makes it a little more fun in general, because I think my ceiling of my skill level, I mean, I'm obviously not even close to like a pro level skill, but I consider myself a pretty good Call of Duty player, and I like to play competitive a lot, and I think that just raised like my skill ceiling, which I don't think anybody, unless it's like a cheating way, I don't think anybody would be against raising your skill ceiling, especially in the pro level, because if they raise it's just like a sport. If the players in the sport or the esport continue to have their skill ceiling raised, it's probably just going to make it a better spectator experience, having more and more skilled players. I mean, you'd rather watch NFL teams play than some like middle school football team, because the level of skill is just way higher in the NFL than some middle school football team. So it's just more entertaining to watch, more competitive, and just overall better. Same with COD. But this auto tack sprint's a little bit different. It's kind of like a Scuff controller in that like it bails you out of like certain mechanics, and I don't really like it in COD because, like, I can't remember, I think maybe TP was saying, like, movement is a skill gap. And in a game like COD where a lot of fluky things can happen and it's just more fast-paced, especially in respawns where a lot of kills are happening, there isn't a ton of skill gap anyways. And I feel like having really good movement is a way to kind of separate yourself as a player. And like if you move around the map in a more efficient way or are able to get to cover better or like constantly move yourself from power position to power position and play your life better, I feel like auto attack sprint kind of makes a lot more people better at this and lowers that skill gap. So a player like Karma, who I've always known, Karma just always has had like the best movement. He always like moves around the map effortlessly to me. So a player like Karma, I mean, he doesn't really play like the cracked play style that you see nowadays, like Simp and Abizi, and even those guys, they have great movement. So I'd hate to see like people like Simp and Abizi, who have amazing movement and are kind of known for how like fast pace and their great movement that they have. I don't want to see like somebody with, I can't really think of a player that I think has like horrible movement. But like I don't want a player with super bad movement to have their movement be a lot more even to a player like Simp or Abizi simply because of a game mechanic allows them. So for that reason, I don't really want auto attack sprint in the game, and I think I kind of agree with it in the GA, although I'm not like Merc foregrip and snaking I really think need to go. Auto attack sprint, you could convince me that you could let it stay as like a mechanic in the game, and it is definitely intended for Warzone, so when you're sprinting across the map, you don't have to constantly keep hitting it. But yeah, I understand the controller saving or whatever, you want to save your controller from wear and tear and stuff, but as a competitive mechanic, I kind of hope it could go, but this is one you could convince me to stay in. So I rambled on about that for a little bit longer, but that's something I kind of wanted to really talk about. But the next bit of news I wanted to get into is about the only roster news we have. I haven't heard like any definitive like this roster change is happening. I think a lot of the teams are kind of set and like playing around. But the one thing I did hear, this is not confirmed, not like official or anything, but I did hear OGLA was scrimming with some new player. And at the time of this recording, I don't think that they know who that is. But they are scrimming with some kind of new player, I guess. No idea who this is, can't speculate too much about it, but obviously this player, unless something crazy happened, this player is obviously replacing Chino if they do come in. Not really sure how I feel about this. I think that there can definitely be an improvement made on Chino, but of all the substitutes, Chino's come in and they've gotten a second place and a fourth place, and I know a team with those caliber of players that we talk about all the time, especially the way Slasher's playing, second place, fourth place, that isn't good enough. They expect to win every event. I know that. But to me, unless you like have like a guaranteed thing, you don't switch out Chino because they've been really successful. But once again, if it is something guaranteed, a really talented player or a player that you think fits your team, I don't see a problem with them going for it, replacing Chino. Instead of being like a safe team that can constantly make semifinals, players of that caliber don't want to play it safe. They want to go for it all because they're not in the boat to play it safe and get a couple second places. They're a team of champions and they expect to keep winning. Then lastly, for like a little bit of news, not really news, but my thoughts on something before we get into predictions is the whole enable pander situation. I didn't really get to talk about that a ton because I wasn't as educated on it in the last post show and stuff. But yeah, pander subbed in that second series on the second day for enable and search and destroy, and to me it's just weird. I think there could potentially be a place for something like this, like substitutes, mid-series substitutes in Call of Duty, but I don't think this is the way to do it. I don't think like a 1-for-1 swap does a whole lot. And to me, if you're going to do a swap, I know Enable struggles in search. He's one of the historically like worst, and everybody views him as one of the worst search players of all time. But I don't think there's a situation where you sub him out unless it's for like you have a Simp, Celium, Major Maniac, one of those crazy S&D players just sitting on your bench, Illy, like the EU Cadets. Unless you have one of those players sitting on your bench, I don't think subbing him in 1-for-1 does much, but besides makes the vibes maybe weird and like throws the team off, like, hey, we just got done with this map 1, whether we won or lost, even if it was like a close map and they lost, like, hey, we just got done with this map 1, all right, what's the search? And instead of like talking it over, it's like, okay, actually, let's get Enable out of this column, let's get Pander back in. Like, I don't know. Pander, nothing against him. I think he's a pretty good player. I think he could maybe have a future in the league if he gets on a team from the start and practices with them, but he's no Simp, he's no Celium, he's no S&D superstar. So to me, I don't really understand subbing him in for Enable. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But like, I know in the Overwatch League, if there's one other esport I like to watch, I really do like to watch Overwatch a lot. I like to play it a lot. It's kind of what I've been playing a lot of lately, as this COD doesn't really have anything competitive for me to play. So I've been playing a lot of Overwatch lately, and I understand in that game where subs come in. Like, there's certain maps where certain characters are a lot better. So like, if there's a map where like maybe Reinhardt doesn't fit the meta as much, even though he's pretty much always meta, but like you want to play like a dive, and you have a player who's a really good Winston and a player who's a really good Wrecking Ball or something, you're going to sub those two in. Like, let's say you have 3 tanks on your roster, and one's a Reinhardt main, he's really good with him, but he can only play Reinhardt, and then 2 are pretty versatile but are really good at dive and can play Winston and Ball. Then you're going to want to bring in the people that can play like the dive meta, and if you don't know what Overwatch is, I mean, that's not really that important, but anybody that does watch it knows and plays it, you know what I'm talking about. If you want to play like a dive meta with Winston and Wrecking Ball, then you'll sub in those players that are specialized in that. But we don't really have that in COD. It's not like there's like 7 different guns that can be used, and like a certain gun is good on a certain search map, and like you have a specialist on that map. It doesn't really work that way, because like players scrim a lot and they're trained to play all modes, that like they're all good at all the modes for the most part and know what to do. And they're not like, there's not like players like last year. There wasn't a player that specialized in the SOG or the Maddox or the ICR. Like, technically they had their role and they used that gun, but they weren't considered like specialists in that weapon. Like, there wasn't like, I'm trying to think of another gun from that game. I mean, I basically only play competitive, so I don't really remember many of the guns, but like, I don't know, like, to take a Modern Warfare example, like, you don't see people like, I'm going to specialize in the M13, and then I'm going to bring in the M13 on Gunrunner Search and dominate the map. It's just not really a thing as of right now in Call of Duty, because there's not like special heroes that fit certain maps like there is in Overwatch. The only way I can see the subs working is if it's like a team for team swap, maybe. Like if you have a team full of S&D superstars and you bring them in for the maps 2 and 5 or whatever. But even that feels weird, because like after your team comes off a game 1 hard point, they're hot, maybe they win like a 250 to 100 blowout, and they're like, okay, we feel good, and then all of a sudden you're getting taken out for search, you'll be back game 3. That just feels weird to me. I just don't know a way that it works out in Call of Duty unless the game really changes, or unless somebody comes up with a different method. But the whole enable pander situation, weird to me, didn't make a whole lot of sense. If you're going to try enable, might as well try them for the whole way, because I don't think pander is an answer for search. You're not just going to constantly sub them in for the whole year. So to me, play enable for the whole series, see what you got, see if the team can work. All right, now into predictions. This event does make me a little bit sad, because it is the Minnesota event, as we said. Obviously, as you guys know, I went to the first Minnesota event, not really like a tournament event, but just regular season matches to open up the league. And I had a blast there. It was super fun. The second event I'd been to after the Black Ops 4 champs. We had planned to go to this one as well. This time it'd be a tournament, so we thought it'd be really fun. Then we looked at the teams there, and we saw Dallas and Atlanta and Chicago and Minnesota, obviously. And we were like, okay, this event's going to be, I mean, it's going to be pretty fun. There's a lot of really good teams there. It's going to be a tournament. So unfortunately, we can't go. The Minnesota fans were great last time. The event was great. Everything about it was awesome. But obviously, we can't go to that. That's unfortunate, but we're still online for a good reason, and this event is still loaded with good teams. So I'm going to give my predictions, and we'll see what you guys think of them. Let me pull up the bracket quick. So the groups in this tournament are a little lopsided. Group A is definitely the group of death, as we like to say, like champs time for COD champs. You guys know that. We like to say there's like a group of death when we have like our 6, 7, 8 groups or whatever, but I definitely say in this case, Group A is the group of death. So we're going to start with that one right away. We're just going to get into it. It may be the group of death, but if you feel like FaZe and Empire are the 2 best teams, it's decently easy to make your predictions. Because to me, Seattle Surge is clearly the worst team in this group. Minnesota, I would think, actually had a pretty good chance of coming out of this group a few weeks ago, especially as it is in Minnesota. If the event was going on, I'd give them an even better chance, because that home crowd was really good for them last time. But to me, this group, despite being a group of death, seems kind of clear on who I think is going to come out. But we'll just get into the matches individually. So the first match of that group on the top is Seattle Surge, Atlanta FaZe. I'm obviously picking FaZe in this one. And I remember actually in my last prediction video, before I get into this, there was one commenter that said I should use the bracket, like the, I can't remember what podcast he recommended. I watch a bunch of them, but he said like another like another podcast or YouTube video does. They pull up the bracket, screen record it, and kind of show their predictions. That is a fantastic idea. I am going to attempt to see if I can figure out how to do that. I'm not the best with all this stuff, but I'm going to attempt to see if I can figure out how to do that. But unfortunately, I couldn't do it for this episode because I have a very, very busy week with work and stuff, and the bracket isn't posted anywhere for me to like do the little like fill-in thing like the CDL allows us to do for. They let us like fill in a prediction or whatever. And I have a busy week, and this is really the only time I had to get recording the podcast, and the bracket isn't out yet for me to fill out. So I wasn't able to do it this week, but if it is out for the next event by the time I'm recording, I will try to do that and figure that out, because that is a great idea, kind of like showing instead of just the picture that goes over the audio of the podcast. I could show you like some of my predictions and actually make this into a more interactive video. So I love that idea. The commenter that said that, I'm sorry, I forgot who commented it, but that was a great idea. I'm taking your advice, and I'm going to attempt, if the bracket is out, the bracket prediction thing that they post is out, I'm going to attempt to do that. So that was a great idea. Thank you for that suggestion. But yeah, back to the matches. Surge, Atlanta Faze. You all know where I'm going with this one. I think Faze is probably still the best team in the game. They're winning this one 3-0. Surge they're a team full of all-time great players who aren't playing great. They switched Karma to the main AR, Octane to the sub. Weird. Octane's like the best AR in the game, but whatever works for them. Atlanta's winning 3-0. Then the Minnesota Rocker versus Dallas Empire. Minnesota just seems like they're in limbo to me. It feels like to me they either are winning this event or they're getting knocked out back-to-back series. They look so strong all year, and now they've looked weak recently. This is their home series, so you'd like to see them show out, but they got an absolute death pool draw for their group, unfortunately for them. But like I said, I think they're either probably like going 0-2 or 1-1 or something, or winning the event. There's like I think they're going to have a horrible event or a great event. It's like do or die time for them. I think that they might make a roster change if they struggle again big time for this event, because Champs is coming up, and I think there's a roster lock period, and I'm assuming it's pretty soon. So if they feel like they can't win Champs or get close, they're probably going to make a roster change soon, because they're just falling in the standings recently without being able to win too much after constantly making semifinals and finals and stuff. But in this matchup, I think they fall. I think it's going to be like a 3-1, 3-2. Empire beats Rocker. I really wanted to pick Rocker and like go for an upset, but I think Dallas is probably the best team online, so I can't really say that they'd ever lose to Minnesota. So they're going to beat them 3-1, 3-2, unfortunately for Minnesota, because I'm kind of a fan of them. I do want to see them bounce back. I just don't think it happens here. So that makes that knockout match 1, Surge versus Rocker. I think you all know where I'm going here. I'm going to go Rocker 3-1. I think Surge finally get a map, but I don't know that the Octane Karma switch does a whole lot for them, because if Karma doesn't play well, Octane I'm sure will play well in the sub because he's Octane. But taking your best player off where he's been super successful is kind of weird to me. So I think Surge falls here. They need a roster change. Apparently there was one in the works before, but it didn't go through. I don't know if that's ownership, if that's players, or what the heck's going on there. I don't even know who's playing for them this weekend, but they're not beating Minnesota, so they're going to lose that one, like 3-1. And then that qualifying match 1, the Empire versus Faze. This is an impossible matchup to predict, honestly. Probably the 2 best teams in the game, or 2 of the 3 best teams in the game. I don't really know where to go with this one, because I've kind of always on the boat that Atlanta Faze is the best team, and they're definitely the best team on land, but it seems like Empire to me is better online. But I think over this 2 weeks, or however many weeks they've had off, I think 2-3 weeks that they've had off, both teams, I think Faze improves. My brain is telling me like the smart pick is Empire. They're better online. They've beaten Faze more recently. They're just probably a better team right now, but for some reason my gut's telling me Faze, so I'm going to go Faze. I think it's a 3-2 series. I think it's a very close one. Not shocked at all if Empire win. They probably are going to win, but I'm going to go out on a limb to make my bracket a little different, and I'm picking Faze. So they get out of the group 2-0, and then in that knockout match, the knockout match 2 between Empire and Rocker to see who gets out of the group, the rematch, I think Empire win it again. I think this time it's 3-2. I think Minnesota's finally like kind of caught up. I think they play them really tough. Like they seem to always do, actually, but I think Empire takes this one. Unfortunate, because I'm not a huge Empire fan, but I do like Minnesota a lot and would love to see them get out and make this roster work, because I really like the roster. I like the players a lot, but I think Dallas is just better than them, flat out. I think they are. I think they get this win. Unfortunate for Minnesota. It might be roster change time. I don't technically think they need one, because I think they're an overachieving type of team, but I think they lose this one to Dallas, and maybe roster change talk starts, maybe gunless. So then that means we have Faze coming out of that group as the winner, and Empire as the loser. No shock there. I'm pretty sure all of you are going to predict that unless you're a Surge or Rocker fan. Then moving to Group B, the clearly weaker group, especially with the state Florida's in. They've recently struggled big time. Gorillas are still kind of struggling, but are showing signs of improvement. And then Toronto has actually showed even more improvement. So, I mean, if this was a few weeks ago with Gorillas looking like garbage, Toronto looking like garbage, and Florida at the state they're in, I mean, this could be the easiest cakewalk ever for the Chicago Huntsmen. But a couple roster change moves in here, too. We got Chicago with Prestinni. I know they played an event with him, but it's still new. And then we've got Florida with Awakening. This is his first event. And then LA Gorillas, I believe Saints is back in, so that's his first event in a while. So kind of like a roster change type of group. But the first match in the top of the bracket is the Gorillas versus the Toronto Ultra. I think you guys know where I'm going with this one. Recently, after their performance in that last event, I kind of have been really on the Toronto Ultra train. I think that they're going to win this matchup, although I do think that the LA Gorillas could make some noise this weekend, being that there really is only like one. I think the only team that you can say is basically guaranteed unless something shocking happens to get out of Chicago, but I could easily see any of these other three teams making it out. So if there was a weekend that the Gorillas were going to make noise, this is their chance. But I think that Toronto takes this one. I think it's going to be a really good series, actually. I think it's going to be a 3-2 because Toronto seems like a Game 5 type of team, and the Gorillas also seem to be pushing series long. Recently, they pushed London to a Game 5 in the last event, if they do get to a Game 5, I feel pretty confident because the Gorillas are a pretty good search team, actually. So I think that if they do get to a bunch of Game 5s, there's a decent chance they win the series, but I don't think they do in this case because Toronto is also a great search and destroy team. So Toronto wins this one 3-2. Then the bottom of the bracket, you all know where I'm going with this one. Awakening, don't know too much about him. Hope he's good because I'd like to see Florida get competitive again because the more competitive teams, the better. But I think Chicago wins this one 3-1. I'll give Florida a map, beating their old teammate Prestinni in one map, but Chicago wins at 3-1. So then down in the knockout match 1, it is the LA Gorillas versus Florida. And this might come as a shock to all of you, especially the way I've been on the Gorillas all year. But I'm taking the Gorillas here. 3-1, 3-2, something like that. Close series, a lot of close maps. But I just have this weird feeling that Florida is going to continue their struggles, and for some reason the Gorillas, a pretty decent online team with guys like Blast. Saints is going to add a little more slaying power in place of Spart, and I think that the Gorillas win this one, knock out Florida once again in back-to-back series. They don't win another. Florida doesn't win a series again for back-to-back events, but LA Gorillas shockingly gets a win in the series, and they move on. So then that round 2, that winner's matchup is Chicago versus Toronto. You have no idea how bad I want to pick Toronto, but if I'm not going to pick Chicago to lose day 1, where players like Scump and Formal usually have that slow start, I can't really pick them to win or to lose that second matchup. They are a better team than Toronto, although Toronto's a team that I strongly believe in. Chicago is better than them, so I picked them to win this one, but I think it's going to be another long series. A couple times these teams have played, or at least that one time they played, it was like a round 11 Game 5. I think Gunless clutched up in that, and here I think it goes Game 5 again. I think Toronto has a back-to-back Game 5 series, but I think Chicago is able to clutch up and win that, getting out as the winner in the group. And then down on the bottom of the bracket, the qualifying match 2, the knockout match 2, is the Gorillas versus the Ultra, a rematch of their round 1 matchup in the group. And I really want to pick the Gorillas to get out to be weird, but Toronto impressed me in the last time they played. I think that they're going to do it again here. I think they're going to make another semifinal, and I think Toronto beats LA Gorillas again 3-1, 3-2, another close series. Wouldn't be shocked, actually, this might be shocking for you to hear, but I wouldn't be shocked if LA Gorillas actually wins this and gets out. For some reason, the way my gut is telling me right now, I think Florida is like the team that I would pick least to get out of this group. I mean, if you would have pulled me a few weeks ago, it would have been no doubt Florida and Chicago coming out of this group. But now, for some reason, I think Toronto's my pick. They're going to win this one 3-1, 3-2 over the Gorillas, so it's going to be Toronto as the loser out of this group. But I do think that Gorillas have a decent chance to win this group, and Florida, I mean, they still have a chance because they still have a lot of good players in their team. But with the slump they're in, I don't think they'll do it. But once again, Chicago's coming out of this group, and then the third team, I have no idea. I could see any of them, but I'm leaning towards Toronto or maybe the Gorillas. But for my official predictions, we're going Chicago, Toronto out of this group. So then in the semifinals, the 4 remaining teams are Faze, Empire, Toronto, and Chicago. Kind of a weird 4 because the teams that I think are kind of like the 4th and 5th best teams are New York and OGLA, and neither are here. So That other team that would probably be up there is Minnesota, but I don't think they make it out. So then we got like the 1, 2, 3 teams, and then kind of like a weird middle of the pack team, Toronto, sitting there with them. But that means the winner of Group A plays the loser of Group B. That would be Faze versus Toronto. And I really wanted to pick Toronto to make it to the finals. I love Toronto as a team. I kind of always have liked Toronto sports teams for some reason. The Raptors and all that, I kind of like them. And I really like the Ultra. I like Methods a lot. I think Methods is pretty funny. I like when he was on Optic doing the content and stuff. But I have to pick Faze here. I think they win it 3-1. I think Toronto puts up a good fight, but they're just not on the level talent-wise with Faze, even though Cammy, Methods, Bance, all their players are very good players. But I don't think they're on the level with Faze with the talent-wise. Nothing against them. It's just Faze, I think, is the most talented team there is. So I don't think Toronto's on that level, but I think they put up a good fight. I think it's a 3-1, but I think all the maps are pretty close. And I want to pick Toronto to make it to the final, but I can't. Faze wins this 3-1. Close maps. Another great effort from Toronto, making it to a semifinal for a team that we expected to be bottom of the barrel all year in back-to-back events. That's a great weekend for them, but Faze moves on. And then the next match would be the loser of Group B versus the loser of Group A, versus the winner of Group B, which would be Chicago versus Dallas. I'm sure the league wants this matchup to happen in the final, but for my purposes and my predictions, it's happening in the semifinal, and I think Chicago gets the better of them here. I think Dallas finally goes down online. I think they're obviously the best team in the game, or one of the best teams. I guess I do think Faze is the most talented, but I think Dallas online might be the best team. Chicago's right up there with them. I think with Prestinni, this matchup feels a little personal. Scump and Formal have been bested by Crim. This is obviously kind of a personal matchup a little bit. I think Chicago's able to get the best of them 3-2 in this series. Close series. Not shocked at all. Like I like to always say, not shocked at all if Dallas wins this one. I actually think the smart prediction would be to predict Dallas, but we're going a little bold with some of my predictions with the Gorillas and Toronto coming out and stuff. So I think that Chicago wins this one 3-2. Extremely close. I think Dallas is maybe a better online team right now, but something about Prestinni being there. Chicago wants to take pride in this. They want to get revenge on this team for beating them the last few times. I think Chicago wins this one 3-2 in a close one. So then we got the final of Chicago versus Atlanta. We finally get this matchup. I still believe we haven't gotten this matchup all year. Before Dallas kind of got into their swing, and we were saying that Chicago, early in the LAN year, when we were saying that Chicago and Atlanta were clearly the two best teams when Chicago was smoking Dallas all the time. We said that Chicago and Atlanta were clearly the two best teams. We want to see them match up, and we still haven't gotten that matchup yet. But here we get it. And man, I don't know who to pick because my heart is telling me Chicago. They get another win, but the smart pick is Atlanta. But this whole bracket, we've been going kind of bold, so we're going to go Chicago 3-2. Another close series. Chicago's clutching up a lot of Game 5s for me in my bracket. They beat Toronto in Game 5. Then they beat Dallas, and then they beat Faze. But I think Chicago wins 3-2. Am I super confident in that pick? Not at all. I think that Faze very easily could win this. I think that Empire could very easily beat Chicago in the semifinal. I could easily see Chicago not being in this final. But I'm going to go on a limb again. I've been kind of bold with this bracket so far. I took the safe picks in the groups in Group A. I went a little bit more on a limb in Group B. And then my semifinals, I kind of went on a limb. And now finals, we're going on a limb. Chicago's winning at 3-2. Don't place bets based on my prediction. Not confident in that one, but I'm going to say Chicago wins at 3-2. I think Prestinni continues to give them a boost. The vibes are good. The players on Chicago is one of the only teams that can match the talent of Atlanta, and I think this weekend they get the better of them. Would I be shocked if Atlanta wins? Not at all. Atlanta's probably going to end up winning because my finals prediction always seems to go a little bit weird. But yeah, we're going to pick Chicago to win this one. This is one of the better tournaments I think we have coming up due to how good the teams that are in it are. We got the top 3 teams for the first time in a while, so hopefully we can see Faze and Dallas play in groups, and then hopefully we can see one of the two play Chicago in the semis, and one of the two play them in the finals, so we can kind of see all the top 3 teams match up in a certain way. So I'd really like to see that. That way we could get all 3 to play each other, and we can kind of see where we stand. But that's going to do it for this podcast. Predictions are done. Once again, I want to thank you guys all so much for listening. It really means a lot, all the support and the likes and the new subscribers and stuff. It looks like we could possibly have a chance within this week or next week to get this podcast on Spotify. So let me know if that's something you guys would want, if you'd listen to it on Spotify, if you'd prefer that over YouTube. I know it's kind of hard to listen to an all audio. There's not really a video that goes with it. It's kind of hard to listen to an all audio thing on YouTube, but it was the easiest thing for me to do to get it started. But now that we've uploaded some more, we have some credentials, we can maybe get it on Spotify. So let me know if that's something you guys would want. Be sure to comment that below, and also comment some of your thoughts on these predictions. What are your predictions? Let's get in a little conversation in the comments. Subscribe for more. Have fun watching this weekend. It should be a great one, and I'll see you in the post video.